Action View Basics. Here we are going to learn the concept of layout and partial. We have some exposure to layout and partial up to this point, so this might not be that much difficult topics for you guys. So we'll talk about the concept of templates or views, and then we'll talk about the layout, and then we are going to learn partials. And we are going to see how we can pass local variables, and also how we can render collections. Let's talk about templates or views. So Action View is Rails library, and that supports displaying templates or views. So Action View contains default templating system called ERB. Okay. You can use other templating systems such as Hamal. Hamal is becoming pretty popular in Rails community, and if you want to use Hamal, then all you have to do is just add Hamal Rails gem in your gem file, and then you can create Hamal file, which actually generate the other templates other than ERB. Now, template file naming convention is made of these four parts: name and locale and content type and templating system or templating engine. So we have seen this example of index.html.elb, the show.html.elb, and sayhello.html.elb, and things like that. Okay, so the structure of the name is like this. So index and show, those are the names of the views or templates, and then locale is optional. So in these examples we don't have any locale information as part of the name of the template. Then HTML is the content type. Okay, and then ELB is the templating system. So again, ELB is the default templating system in Rails, and that's what we have used so far. Again, if you want to use a different templating system such as Hamal, then the files you're going to create is going to look like show.html.hamal and things like that. Okay, so what is that ELB for? So ELB is used to create dynamic content. Okay, so ELB stands for embedded Ruby. So basically you are going to have embedded Ruby code in your HTML file. So when you have index.html.elb, you could embed Ruby code in that file, and those Ruby code will be evaluated by by Rails, and the output will be inserted into HTML. Now you can embed Ruby code in two different ways. One is %% and the other one is a % equal and %. So % is used to just evaluate the Ruby code. % equal, it not only evaluate the Ruby code within the brackets but also print out the result. Okay. So in the bottom of the slide you see an example where we are using both. So the line here, we are just evaluating this for statement. So for people instance variable, I'm going to take each one of those as person, and so basically this is the for block. And inside we want to print out the name of the person. So in this case we want to use this % equal the embedded code. Okay, so we have seen examples of both in our exercises so far, and hopefully you guys get the idea what those things are for now. Okay, moving forward, let's talk about layout. So layout is used to provide a common look and feel for the views or templates. So in the layout, you can specify the common header and common footer, or you can specify the common style sheet, and you can also include commonly usable JavaScript libraries and so on. So within a layout, you can have you can specify assets tags, you can specify yield and content for, and you can specify partials you want to use in all views. And we're going to talk about each of these in a bit more detail in the rest of the presentation. Now you can have different layout depending on the scope you want to apply. So the application scope layout, which is actually provided by default by the Rails application, in Rails application, that is applied to all views of the application. You can specify different layout for a particular controller, and that is going to be controller scope layout. And we are going to see how we can specify a particular layout for a particular controller. Asset tag helpers. So asset tag helpers provide methods for generating HTML that link views to feeds, JavaScript, style sheet, images, and videos, and things like that. Okay? So we have auto discovery link tag and JavaScript include tag and style sheet link tag and image tag, video tag, and audio tag. So these are methods that you can use to feed some assets, and we're going to actually talk about these two in detail, JavaScript include tag and style sheet link tag, in our presentation of asset pipeline sometime today. So you can use these tags in layouts and other views, although the top three are typically present in the layout, so that they could be applied to all views of the application. So this is the application.html ELB. This is a root layout, and this is created for every Rails application, as we talked about before. So in here, in the head element, you can see there is a style sheet link tag and JavaScript include tag and also CSRF meta tag. Okay? So we're going to actually again talk about these two tags later on in the asset pipeline presentation. And then in the root layout, it has what is called the yield method. So this is a method, right? And basically result of calling yield method will be inserted in this location. Okay. So yield identifies a section where content from the view should be inserted. So we'll talk about that in the following slide. So yield is a location where the content of the view will be inserted. Okay. Now you can actually have multiple yielding regions. So let's say we have layout file. So this is a layout file. So in this case, we have a regular yields. So this is where the contents of the view will be inserted. And we can also specify yield and title. What it means is that I want to insert title region from the view right here. Okay, so let's say we have this layout, and then this is the view. Okay, so in this case, the view can specify the contents for a particular region. So here, content for title, that means this title, the one between these two percent element, those fragments will be inserted into the region for that title. Okay, so the resulting HTML file is going to be, so this title, my title, will be inserted right here. So that is going to be resulting here. And the and then content for footer, and the layout doesn't have the region for footer, so this is not going to be resulting in HTML file. And then actual content, okay, the actual content of hello Rails and hello JPassion.com will be inserted into this yield location. Okay,
So basically yield title is basically, this is an argument to yield method, and basically what it does is find the content for that title region in the view and then insert it right here. Okay, we are using percent and equal, so result will be inserted, print out here. Okay, and the yield is just for the actual non, so the rest of the contents will be inserted in this region. Okay, so that is for yield and content for. Does that make sense? Okay, moving forward. Layout usage convention. So the root layout is provided for every Rails application, and that is the application.html ELB file on the app views layout directory, and that is applied automatically to all views that are being displayed. Okay, unless more specific one exists or is explicitly specified in the controller. So this one applies to every view for that application, except the cases where you have more specific version of the layout. For example, you could have controller scope layout. In that case, the controller scope layout will be applied for that particular controller. Okay. And you can also specify layout directive at the class level in any controller, and that is basically class level layout. And also you can specify layout for a particular action as well. Okay, so let's actually see the examples. So this is a case that we are specifying controller scope layout. So any views related to the actions of this controller will use my layout1 layout file instead of that root layout file for the application. So this is controller scope layout. You can also specify per action. You can specify layout per action. In that case, when you call render method, you can specify layout information. So in this case, for index.html.elb file, my layout2 will be used. Okay, so let's do exercise 1. Yeah, there is a question from Terry. I'm going to actually answer that question after I talk about this exercise 1. All right, so let's go to exercise 1 here. So here we are going to create a brand new application called the Action View app, and then we are going to again do scaffolding on student. Okay, and again we are going to create a table doing migration, and we provide test data in cs.db file. Then we have to rake dbc to actually run this code, and then we modify the routes.lb file. Okay, so you guys probably are now accustomed to this practice of creating these applications. Okay, then we are going to start the server. Then you should be able to see this listing of students page. Okay, all right, so now when you click show, you should be able to see detailed information of that student. Okay, now we are going to change top level layout. So go to application html.elb file, and you are going to add this very simple h3 element. So we want to apply this h3 element for every single views that gets printed out. So you save this change, and then if you refresh, you are going to see this message. This is from top level layout, and for any so this is a listing of the page, and this is the detail page, and basically every single page should have that statement of this is from top level layout. Nothing really fancy. Okay, now we are going to specify the regions here. So again, we are going to change the root layout, and here we are going to specify 3 regions. So we have specified title region,
and header region and the footer region. So basically you are indicating the location, insertion location of the actual content. Okay, and then we are going to modify index.html ELB file. So this is the view that will be inserted into this layout, right? Okay, so we have created 3 regional content. So we are going to create the title region content. So basically this is the content that will be inserted in this location, and the header, this is the content that will be inserted into this location, and then the footer, this content will be inserted into this footer location, and everything else, all these things will be now be inserted into this yield location. Okay, so once we have saved those changes, and then we are going to refresh the page, and you can see we have a title, my title, and my header and copyright jpassion.com, and all the other pages should have, so yeah, so that is only index.html.elb file. Okay, so you guys can actually change other template files to do the same, but for now, since we changed only index.html ELB file to provide the actual fragment content, this is the index.html file is the only one that will display this information, these things. Now 1.4, we are going to try controller scope layout. So we're going to create another layout called mylayout.html.elb file. Okay, so you can just copy these contents, and this is basically you can copy from the root layout, and the only thing that we have changed is basically my layout one. Is that one? Yeah, whatever. Okay, is layout. Okay, so now you have a separate layout file. Okay, and then we are going to specify in the student controller to use this layout instead of the root layout. Okay, so now when we refresh the page, it's supposed to use controller scope layout instead of the root layout. Okay, 1.5, we are going to use action scope layout. So we're going to create another layout. So we are going to name it as my layout2.html ELB file, and basically we're going to just change this my layout2, and then for index page, we say we are going to render for HTML, we are going to use my layout2. Okay, so for index page it will use my layout2, and all the other pages should use so it will use my layout1 layout file. Okay, so that is exercise 1. So I'm going to give you guys 10 minutes to do exercise 1. The next topic is partials. So we have seen examples of partials, in our scaffolding. There was a form partial that is being used in new html.elb file as well as edit.html.elb file, because those two views are using same form representation. So what is and why partial? So partial is a view fragment. It's a common view fragment that could be used by multiple views. So partials enable reuse. So you create a partial and you could be using that partial in multiple views. And by using partial in views, it makes the views simple to write and simple to read as well. Now, how to render a partial? So in your view, these are the ways that you can invoke the partial. By the way, this is a partial naming convention. Partial file itself is prefixed with underscore. So whenever there is a file with underscore prefixed, that indicates that that is a partial file. However, when you are invoking a partial in the view, you don't have to have that underscore. So this is the way that the view will invoke partial. So you can render and then you specify partial and the name of the partial. So in this case, it will find underscore partial underscore product .html ELB partial, and then it will render that partial on that location. You can just say product. Okay. In this case, what Rails does is that if there is in fact the underscore product HTML ELB, then it knows it's a partial. If there is no underscore product.html ELB, then it will just display product.html ELB file. So it searches for the partial first, and it finds it, then it will use that partial. Okay. You can also use add product. And again, it will do the same thing. It will try to find a partial, meaning underscore product HTML ELB file first, and if it is present, it will render that partial. Otherwise, it will consider that as the name of the view. Okay. Now, the difference between these two, which we are going to talk about later on, is here you can actually pass local variable. Again, for now you can think of all these three different ways of rendering a partial doing the same thing. Okay. A partial is searched as a default in the same directory where views are located. So if you're using this render command in, let's say, xyz.html.elb file, the partial will be searched in the same directory where xyz HTML.elb file is located as a default. You could actually have another directory called shared. So if you happen to have partials that you want to actually share by many controllers, okay, then you can actually have them in shared directory. And then when you say shared/header, it will try to find this partial file on the apps, views, and shared directory. Okay, again, it will try to find if there is a partial with this name, like underscore header HTML.elb file. Okay? If it is not, then it will just consider this one as a regular view. Okay? So you can certainly have set of partials in the shared directory, and then you can share those partials in many views that belong to multiple controllers. Okay? And of course, you can use partial in any views, including layout. Okay? So you could certainly use the partial layout, assuming that partial will be applicable to all those views. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about passing local variables. So you can also pass local variables into partials, making them even more powerful and flexible. So instead of using this instance variable in your partial, you can actually use like a local variable. So you don't have to use @zone. Okay, so instead you can just use zone as a local variable. So the way you can do that is that when you are invoking a partial, so I'm invoking a partial called underscore form.html.elb, I can actually set locales like a zone and zone. So basically I'm assigning this zone instance variable to zone local variable, so that local variable could be used in the partial like this. Okay, so this is a little bit simpler. So instead of using @zone, you can just use zone. Local variable in partial. So every partial has a local variable with the same name as the partial. So if you happen to have, let's say, customer partial, then you can assume, let's see an example. Let's assume we have an example of render partial, and the partial's name is going to be customer. So underscore customer.html.elb file. Okay. Now within this partial, you can use customer local variable, which refers to customer object, customer instance variable. Okay. So that is a default, in fact. Okay, so in this case, you don't in fact have to do this because it's going to be automatically done for you. Okay, as long as the partial. Oh, this is not gonna work. Yeah, so the partial's name is form in this case, right? Okay, so the locale of form will be available, but if you are in this case you want to actually make this zone as a part the local variable, then you have to actually specify it here. In this example, suppose the name of the partial is customer, then customer local variable will be automatically available from at customer the instance object. Okay, if you want to pass a different object to this local variable, then you can specify like this, object and new customer. So new customer instance variable will be set as customer local variable in that case. Okay, so that's basically what we just talked about here. Shortcut notation. So you can just use at customer. So that is basically the third option that we talked about here. So we actually talk about 3 different ways that you can invoke a partial, right? Okay, so this is the most compact way of calling a partial. Okay, so in this case, the difference between the third one from the first 2 is basically the local variable is automatically get constructed. So assuming customer instance variable contains an instance of customer model, this will use customer HTML ELB partial to render, and it will pass the local variable customer to the partial, which refers to customer instance variable in the parent view. Okay, so in this case, when you're using customer, then partial can use the customer local variable. Now, if you're using either customer, of the single quote customer or double quote customer, or if you're using this syntax, then the partial cannot use customer local variable directly. Okay, so in that case, you might have to use at customer instance variable directly. Okay, so that is exercise 2. So let's take a look at the exercise 2. So here, this is the since we did scaffolding. We have actually taken a look at this one already before, right? So let's just go over just one more time. So if you go to the views, and we have students, and this is the partial, okay, that is being used in the edit. Yeah, so we just to say render form, right? And also new HTML ELB, we are calling render form. Right? Since there is a partial called underscore form.html ELB, the partial will be inserted here, basically. So that is what I just showed you. And then, when you do create new students, this particular form, and this is for editing, and so they are coming from that partial. So now we're going to actually create a new partial. So we're going to actually create the page header HTML ELB for partial in the same directory of like a students. Okay, so we are going to create page header partial, and basically we are going to take this content. Okay, we just display my page instance variable, and then we just say this. Okay. And then we are going to modify HTML, new HTML ELB file, and here we are going to set my page with new student content, and then we are going to render the page header partial, and same thing for edit HTML ELB file. So in this case, the my page instance variable is set with the editing student, and then we are using the same partial. So when you refresh the page, and for editing, we should see this my page header editing student. For creation, we should see my page header new student. Okay.
2.3, this is for exercising local variable. Okay, so we're going to create another partial called the student.html partial. Okay, and this is actually captured from the show html.elb file. So we are going to change show.html later on to use this partial. Okay, so basically this is for just displaying student's name and student's age. Okay, so now this is good. So now we are going to change show.html file to use that partial. So we are going to use render student partial, and then you want to comment out this one. So instead of using this one directly, you are going to use a partial that contains this fragment. Okay. Alright, so that's what we did, and then if you refresh the page and you are still seeing things okay like this for student information. And now we are going to modify. So we are going to actually try to use this guy, partial and student. Okay, and yeah, this one still should work fine, right? So we are just using a different format. Okay, this guy and this guy, they are doing the same thing. We are just exercising different format. Okay, so remember there are 3 different ways that you can invoke partial, right? If you still remember, basically we are exercising these 2 schemes, the first 2 schemes. Okay, and that still should work fine. Okay, now we're going to actually change this student.html file to use a local variable like a student. Okay, and then when you refresh the page, you are going to experience a problem. It says undefined local variable student. Okay, because those 2 schemes, you know, these two, the local variable is not automatically set. Okay, so what we are going to do now is that we are going to use this syntax, render student. Okay, so in this case, if you're using this syntax, then student local variable will be automatically set by the student object. Okay, so now you save, modify and save this change, and then when you refresh the page, you should actually see the content. Okay. Alright, okay, so I'll give you guys about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll give you just 10 minutes to do exercise 2. Next topic is how we can render collection using a partial. So this is how you are going to render a collection using a partial. Basically, rendering a collection meaning you are going to display same item in a form of a list. Okay, so partials are very useful in rendering collection. So basically, when you pass a collection to a partial via collection option, the partial will be used for each member of that collection. Okay, so this is important. Partial is not for the whole collection, but it will be used for each member of that collection. Okay, so let's say we have in this page we are rendering a product partial, and we are passing a collection object. So that collection object is captured as products, and here we can actually pass you know, so we are going to call it as a, each one of those will be called as a product if you want to. So these 2 are in fact the same. So suppose we have underscore product.html partial, and that is again is used to render each instance. Okay, meaning each member of that collection, and you can use the product local variable like this in the partial to refer to the instance that is being rendered. So this partial will be used to display an instance of that collection. So this will be used for each item of those collections. So if there are 5 products, and each product will be using this partial to get displayed. Okay. Instead of doing this, you can actually do this shortcut. So if you say render at products, then means it's going to use product HTML partial to display each item in that products collection. Does that make sense?
So in this case, partial is for displaying each item, not the whole thing. Okay, so you might in fact have this notation. So sometimes if there is no product, then you might want to display this message like there are no products available. Otherwise, you are going to display in a form of a table. Okay, so either you use this. If it is not null, then you're going to actually do this. Otherwise, you are going to display this message. Okay. Okay, moving forward. So let's do exercise 3. So in this case, we are going to use a collection partial. So this is the one. Then we are going to create individual. We're gonna actually modify student HTML ELB file. So this is actually for displaying a particular student. So we will display student and age, and then we're gonna have a link. Okay. So this is the fragment per student. Okay, so we are going to create a student HTML ELB file like this, and that should be in the same directory where you have all the other views and all the other partials. And then we are going to change index.html ELB file, and just to make sure we are using the just to make sure we are using partial, I'm going to just name it as a my header 2 or something like that. Okay, and then instead of displaying this guy inside this index.html ELB file, you're going to comment this guy out, and instead you're going to use this notation. So here basically what you're saying is that I am going to use student partial, and then I'm passing the student's collection object. Okay, so basically this will do the same thing as for this. Okay, so you make a change and then refresh the page, and it should work the same. And basically, my header 2 gets displayed, which indicates that we are not cheating. We are not actually using this guy. Instead, we are using this guy. Okay. And we can also modify in the that is the listing student. So this is listing student, and modify the modification is to use a shortcut. Okay, so in this case we are going to use a shortcut syntax. So instead of this syntax, we are going to use shortcut syntax, and we still should see the list of students. Okay, so pretty straightforward, I'm hoping. So I'll give you guys about the 5 minutes to try this exercise.